Over the next 25 minutes, I want to talk to you about African Americans, their relationship with our country. Before that, I want to emphasize my first 8 main initiatives, and these are in order. Curbing climate change is number 1. Peaceful international diplomacy is number 2. And I'm going to talk about how these are interrelated into the African American culture and within our community as American citizens throughout this talk. Number 3, empowering women. Number 4, racial equality. Number 5, ending poverty to incarceration. Now, think of this. I'm communicating about thousands of issues. If in the top 5 issues I spend time on in office relating to ending poverty to incarceration, racial equality, how climate change affects African Americans in the United States and abroad, and peaceful international diplomacy and how that affects our military services, you can start seeing this trend of equality. Number 6, higher income and wages. And we'll talk about the disproportionate income equality that we currently have in the States. Number 7, reduction of global nuclear arms. And number 8, teaching youth to think over regurgitating. And that goes back to STEM logical thinking, especially in inner cities. So let's talk about equality for African Americans. Our administration completely recognizes that since the end of slavery in the United States, African Americans have endured a tumultuous period in a society that only basically recently had the basic human rights that we all are accustomed to. Yes, we made progress. We elected a brilliant African American man. President Obama was an inspiration to us to all. However, I've been in North Carolina 12 times in the last 15 months. I've seen racism. I've seen hate. I've seen evil that I haven't seen since a child. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. I was born there in the end of 1975. My father marched with MLK before that. If you read his autobiography, I want you to pay attention to Martin Luther King Sr. That was a strong man, a robust man. You have to realize that MLK Jr. had so many people in his life, so many preachers, so many people of church that communicated about equality. And this is a man that spent time researching all aspects of government, all aspects of thought. He read Marxism. He read things about communism just to understand how someone could think that way. He read about so many different cultures that started 5,000, 10,000 years ago, trying to debate how one can be able to have a society of equality. I've put together 10 different initiatives, and I would like you to communicate on our video channel about which ones really resonate with you on how we can create a stronger level of equality. We all know that whites make a disproportionate amount of income. We all know that blacks serve longer sentences for the same crimes. We all know that blacks have a harder time rising up in society based upon so many different factors from our education, healthcare, but most importantly, in the youth stages, the ability to be able to get clean water, a strong meal, to be able to have a shower, to be able to go to school and learn and have that different type of opportunity. It seems that so many African Americans and American citizens at these early stages, and this is a poverty issue also. I mean, there are a lot of whites that are struggling. But when you look at the numbers and you go in these inner cities, the poverty that African Americans face, it's a different level of poverty than a white person faces. And if you disagree, I would love to communicate with you. I'd love to show you some of the places that I've been and I go to. Number 1, I do not believe that life sentences are the answer to our judicial system. I do not believe that this legislative path is best for society. We have so many for-profit prisons that are simply minting money. The more occupants, the more revenue. And then they stack 3 or 4 people in a cell. They pay the guards minimum wage. They allow debauchery. They allow anger. They allow hate. They allow these inner workings. Why? Because the more rage, the more chaos that happens in these for-profit prisons, the longer people stay in. 17 months ago, our current president stood and said, "What do you have to lose?" pointing to African Americans. What do you have to lose? I'll tell you what you lost. You lost halfway houses, the ability for a prisoner to be able to get out of prison and look at the society, be able to have a chance for a job, a place to live. You lost the ability to have your schools, to be able to have a different start. All the money is going up. This tax breaks is just another example of that. So, number one, the longest sentence will be 50 years. And that counts for any egregious crime. Somebody must think of their second chance. They must try to be able to become a better person. If somebody's walking around and they know that they're going to have a life sentence, if they know that they have zero chance of escaping incarceration, what do you think their action will be? This is a fight situation. This is not a freeze. You will go out on your final say. That anger, that system of corruption that we're consistently trying to incarcerate the most struggled beings, the people that don't have a place to live, don't have a paycheck, don't have a family surroundings. And now you have all these environmental pressures, these political pressures, these legislative pressures. So number one is a shorter sentence for any type of egregious crime. And I know that sounds crazy to some, but 50 years. I mean, think about how long a day is, a month is, a year is. How long must someone pay for that? Number two, very important. The use of non-lethal rounds by all police and military. Think about a situation in which a cop car rolls up on a house. You have backups. Everybody's been trained. They're in these different shooting ranges day in and day out. They have a full basis, a full idea of the situation. And how is it possible that a police officer puts 6 rounds into a youth? How are we not changing that? We're looking to stop somebody from terror. We're looking to have that person, put down their weapon in that situation. This rules of engagement that police use in society need to be standardized and need to be changed with non-lethal rounds. That's number two. Number three, let's get back to the economics. How are we going to change this current poverty path that most are on? When we look at the actual percentage of loans and homeownership and credit cards on one side, equity for African Americans, and then if you look at the debt, the payday loans, the high interest mortgages, all these different things, it's very difficult for an African American to establish any type of wealth. When you look at the different buckets of how someone is able to rise up, how they're able to provide college for their kids, how they're able to have any type of retirement, home ownership, that equity has been a major part of the American dream. And that is not an opportunity for many African Americans. There is a couple different terms that people use. One is called redlining. It's neighborhood segregation. I urge you to look it up. It's the practice of not investing or providing financial or other services for communities with high percentage of Black residents. This continues to happen more and more. It's something that is shocking. So number 4 deals with foreclosures. It deals with subprime loans. It deals with the opportunity for an average African American that has a history of success, that has the basis of providing that mortgage payment, is able to be a homeowner. I mean, these are 1, 2, 3, 4. These are major progress. I've never seen a presidential candidate talk about these issues, and that's exactly why I'm running. I am so fed up with talk. It's talk, lies. It's fraud. It's corruption. Somebody that runs for politics just stands up and they say what somebody wants to hear, and they look at which super PAC is going to judge them, how their funding is going to go. They don't deal with logic. They don't deal with how people are going to, deal with the situation. With every talk, I communicate about different books. And these are 3 books that I'd like to everybody that should be reading in terms of when we're talking about this subject. First is obviously the great book, right? King James Version. When you look at the different paragraphs and we actually have some type of sense of humanity, we talk about equality over and over again. The next one is, you got to read this. There's dozens of them, but this is one of the better ones. It's an autobiography of MLK. They go through his family. They go through his learnings. This is a man who graduated from Morehouse College at 19 years old. This is a man that spends all of his time learning, reading. This is a man I wish I knew. This is a man that my father knew. You want to know how America got started? Howard Zinn. That is the man that you should learn about. That is the man that communicates about this great country and also the racial inequality that constantly repeats itself. This is not a situation where things are getting better. This is a situation where you have the ups and downs. And the only way that's going to change is if you have somebody in office that wants to take action, that wants to talk less and actually make things happen, right? So we've talked about the first four. Let's start about the next one, right? Let's get into the fun stuff. Let's get into the action. Number 5, let's talk about gangs. Let's talk about violence. How many gang members have you talked to? How many have you interviewed? How many documentaries have you seen? How many prisons have you been to? Let me tell you about my experiences. My experience is that a gang member is forced into that life from different pressures, from a society, from a culture, from a survival base. And they understand the rights and wrongs. They understand that they want a different path. However, they are marked up. They have tattoos, A to Z, and they cannot escape that. They're in a prison. They're out in society. They're out for their first job. And suddenly that prison is a continual process, right? So, number 5 is the idea that tattoo removal as an elective medical service for all prisoners, meaning that even for-profit prisons must have the ability for a prisoner to be able to have their tattoos removed. How simple is that? You're adding negligent budget. You are able to provide a way that people are able to remove gang life. They're able to have a possible entrance into society. And more importantly, they're taking a stand of action for a difference in their life, their beliefs. Most gang tattoos are filled with hatred, right? They're filled with anger. They're filled with a certain life that they've had in the past. And we've all done things that we regret. We've all done things that we wonder, wow, who is that guy? Who is that woman? What was I thinking? Yes, some of these actions are far more drastic, but we must get them removed, right? Number 6, the New Dawn program. This is where an African American leaves prison, or any American citizen leaves prison. But, when we talk about the 2.5 million prisoners in the United States, and we talk about percentage of population, African Americans make up a strong percentage of this penal system, right? So this is a situation where an African American or any criminal coming out of the penal system says, hey, I need a new life. I need an income. I want to do something with my life, right? You have these positive vibes. You've been in a 3x6 cell. You've been reading. You want a chance. We will work with the Peace Corps. We will work with the State Department, and we will find a humanitarian effort, an action, a journey for that person to undertake, right? This is a separate group, and we will provide an income for that. And that's a 2, 4, 5-year journey. That's someone that gets a different perspective on life, that sees the comforts that America offers. You have to realize that most countries are struggling. They're struggling because of climate change. They do not have clean water. They don't have sanitation. Education or healthcare is not even optional. Sometimes it's only for the affluent. America is one of the few countries that has so many wonderful opportunities, but it's slipping. We are the new Rome. We are getting lazy. We are starting to fight internally, and this dichotomy and polarization is weakening us. Countries like China, countries in Western Europe, they've got their game on. They are making progress in renewable energy, climate change, the economics, their healthcare, education system. Think about this. In the healthcare system alone, we spend $3.2 trillion a year, yet our healthcare system is in the bottom 40. We're at, in terms of actual countries that have an organized system. There's just so much bureaucracy, so much money that's going into corporate America just so a couple leaders can have their stock prices jump up. This isn't going into wages for the African American. This isn't going to wages to the average American, right? So when you look at actually wages as a percentage of GDP, wages as a percentage of stock market, wages as a percentage of over time, these are decreasing. The quality of life is not increasing. The quality of life is decreasing. There are more expenses. There are harder ways to earn income. The jobs are being taken from us. So, am I proud of this program? Absolutely. Do I think we can make it happen? Absolutely. Do I think that's something that we could put in together in the first week of office? Absolutely. The next program I really want to talk about. We're going to talk about ex-felons. We're going to talk about a paycheck equivalent. We're going to talk about non-welfare income, right? So when these humanitarian efforts outside the United States, being able to have an actual paycheck, being able to bring that back. And it's going to be similar to an actual armed forces, right? So when you actually go out as a Navy officer or you're in the Marines or so forth, you're getting that check. You're so busy. You're working, you're doing a lot of things. You're having those type of savings. So imagine ex-convict, okay, has tattoos removed, is doing humanitarian efforts, representing our great country, comes back with a little savings, a little earnings, has a new perspective on life. I mean, those are a lot of problems solved with the initiative. I hope you agree. Now, here's the best part of it. Their criminal record will be expunged. That's number 8, right? I mean, think about that. You come back, it's a fresh life. You've done your time. You've paid your debt to society as a world, right? Because United States makes up 4% of the world's population. With immigration, exports, import, I mean, this is a globalized world. Doing good outside of our borders is the same as doing good inside our borders, right? We're Christians. We are people that think broader. We're people that want to put our best foot forward. It doesn't matter where that previous foot was. It matters where the next one is. Number 9, education. We spend so much effort teaching our kids to regurgitate the same old nonsense. This happened in history, which a lot of times is completely fraudulent. It happened a completely different way. This is the way that somebody should be able to learn. We need to teach people how to think. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation, they are coming for our jobs. We must teach people how to have a craft, how to defend for themselves psychologically, spiritually, how they can basically earn an income. These are important things. We will invest time, energy, and budget in the inner cities. This is for logical thinking, STEM, vocational trades. We must get in the middle of these communities. That's South Chicago. That's parts of deep Compton, Los Angeles. That is parts of, Oakland. That's parts of New York. I mean, deep parts of Texas. I mean, there's some strong places that have wonderful people that are also just overridden with crime, that don't have the ability to learn. And there's that social pressure of doing good, of being able to provide for your communities looked down upon, especially these early ages within gangs. If we can allow someone to escape that process early on in a preventive measure, that's powerful stuff. That's number 9. Number 10, we talk about a 1-month summit. Every year I'm in DC. It will make the 1 million march look small. And this is providing every single different type of cultural leader, community leader within the African American journey for equality to come out to DC. And we'll talk about the progress of these 10 steps. We'll talk about what's working, what isn't. We'll talk about the feedback. We'll talk about the changes to legislative measures, right? So, Hart Cunningham 2020. These are 10 initiatives I have for racial equality. Now, when we go back to my first 8 of 1,000 initiatives, we talk about curbing climate change was number 1. How does that affect African Americans? Who do you think is going to be affected most, the affluent or the poor? Racial equality is also about income equality. When you look at Houston, parts of Florida and so forth, and all the different hurricanes and disasters that will continue to happen, this isn't insurance they're not even involved hardly anymore. I mean, this is a person that's trying to defend against the realms of nature, against biblical proportion disasters. How are you going to build your house again? How are you going to provide for your family? Okay. So number 2, peaceful international diplomacy. We're in a nuclear arms race. $1.7 trillion is about to go toward more nuclear arms. We already have thousands with our 800 bases outside of our states. That money needs to go toward all the different programs we talked about. It needs to go toward education, healthcare, equality, right? So why are these related? They're all intertwined, right? This is one mission with all these different macro and micro topics of abilities to make this change. Number 3, empowering women. You think white women have a problem in terms of being able to get advancement in the workplace? You think white women have a problem with any type of, sexual attacks and so forth? African American women, I mean, you're talking about 3 to 4 times stronger. But speaking out, that's a hard thing to do. And a lot of times it's not worth the effort. That's the mindset. So empowering women, it's empowering the Black woman, right? It's that family member. It's our mother. It's our daughters. It's our aunts. I mean, that's a deep thing. That's a thing that should have happened long, long time ago. This patriarch-dominated society that we're seeing in the White House will change. One of the things I really hope for is that my VP candidate will be a minority woman. It's something I would be honestly just blessed to have, right? Number 4, think about this. 4 out of thousands of issues. Racial equality. We've talked a lot about it. I will continue. Number 5, ending poverty and incarceration. We talked about. Number 6, higher income and wages. We talked about the fact that the quality of life is dropping, the fact that wages are staying the same, the fact that GDP is going through the roof, that white people are only people making money in the stock market, in real estate. And that is a small group of affluent. And a lot of times that's from legislative pressure. You got to realize that we live in a democratic republic. And so it's not a democracy. This is a economy. This is a government that can be bought. All these different lobbying efforts by super PACs to allow oil and gas tax breaks, Monsanto tax breaks, for-profit prison bonuses. I mean, this is ridiculous. That goes against all logic. 94% of Americans want change on climate change ASAP, but nothing's happening. Simply denial. Why? Democratic Republic, right? So you need to vote for somebody you believe in and you trust. I want to be that person. But if I am not, I want you to look at these different initiatives. I want you to look at them and say, hey, these are things that need to be done. But how are they going to get done? The private sector is limited. This has to be done at the top. Reduction of global nuclear arms. Obviously, talked about the $1.7 trillion. And then teaching you to think or regurgitate. And that's the education system at the very basics. And that needs more money, infrastructure, and love, really, from the federal government on all states, especially ones that are struggling with crime and have the lowest economic, opportunities. So Hart, Cunningham, 2020. Greatly appreciate the time.